everybody, welcome. Welcome. So great to see you all this afternoon. Thank you for being here.
Hi, everybody. We're so excited to be here.
Oh, there's over 400 people have signed up to be at this session today or to watch the replay. And that is pretty amazing, we think.
It is.
Yeah.
It's nowhere I'd rather be on a Thursday lunchtime. Is it Thursday? Yes.
I don't know what day it is, but I do know that it's 7 days until March 5th. Because I'm like, every day, how many days? How many days?
Have you got a
So
calendar?
publication day. Let's see if we should spotlight ourselves. Yes. Okay. So as folks are coming in, we can introduce ourselves, set the scene for the conversation that we're going to have this afternoon. This is actually the second time that we have hosted this class, albeit with a slightly different context last time. We hosted a similar class 2 years ago to celebrate Zoe launching her book. And since then, Zoe's book has become a Sunday Times bestseller and impacted many, many lives of mothers all over the world. And now we're 2 years on. And now it's my turn to publish a book and impact the lives of many, many women all over the world. So we thought this is a nice excuse to do our session again because we had so much fun and we got really, really, really lovely feedback. So for those of you who have come over from Zoe's side, welcome. I'm so happy to see you. My name is Lauren Currie, and I am the founder and the CEO of UPFRONT. UPFRONT is an industry-leading education platform that upskills women via working with organisations to build confidence infrastructure at scale. And I have written my very first debut non-fiction book. And she is out on March 5th, which is in 7 days. And it's a book about confidence. So that's why we're here today to talk about motherhood and confidence. And whenever I'm doing anything around motherhood specifically, Zoe is always my go-to partner. And I know that Zoe has her focus on motherhood. And when she's thinking about confidence, she always brings me into her space too. So we are delighted to be here. And Zoe, do you want to say hi and tell folks who you are?
Yeah, thanks. Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to be here. How many have we got? 71. My God, I'm just buzzing. I am the founder of Motherkind. I am completely obsessed with supporting mothers through their matrescence, through those early years, particularly thinking about confidence, which is why Lauren and I became such fast friends and do so much work together, because we know what a hit your confidence takes in the first 3 years in particular of motherhood. And we also know how so much of that isn't our fault. So much of that comes from the environments that we're operating in. So we are going to get into that today. I also have a book. As Lauren said, I released this 2 years ago. It became a Sunday Times bestseller, which was my childhood dream. So thank you to each and every one of you who bought it or didn't buy it, but shared it or spoke about it. Every single tiny thing matters when you are trying to get a book out there. And Lauren is learning this live at the moment. So thank you so much. And yeah, I'm just really excited to dive into confidence this lunchtime, because I think now more than ever we need to be having these conversations as women. We need to be gathering as women more than ever. Lauren, I wanted to ask you, you've been in this space for a long time now. Why now? What was it about 2026 that you decided to put this book out there?
Yeah, so you're right. It has been a long time, and I can't quite believe UPFRONT's in her 10th year this year, which does blow my mind a little bit. And when I think back to, so for 5 years, it was my side project, like my favorite little side hustle that I just loved so much, but didn't have the confidence to take the leap and turn her into a business. And then for the last 5 years, she has been a business with a team and clients and impact. And I think back then, we were definitely one of the first to talk about confidence from a systemic perspective in a way that centered the idea of intersectionality. And essentially, what that means is that you were never the problem. The problem is the context that we're operating in, the rules that we have absorbed by a very patriarchal society that was not built to enable women to build confidence and survive and thrive. And if we fast forward to 2026, we are in a very high stakes cultural moment where women's rights are being rolled back. And, I've never seen confidence as a self-help topic, of course, on paper. And if you look at the back of our books, they're probably in the self-help section. But I have always seen confidence as a tool for behavior change, a tool for like an economic lever that builds wealth for women, a tool for social justice that helps create justice for people. And now I think that's becoming really clear. It's like, this is not about self-help or just about personal development. This is about our civic duty, the civic moment that we are in. Because confidence is the bridge that turns ideas into action. Confidence is the skill that turns action into change. And how we respond to a lot of the trauma and terror and distress that we're all seeing on our news screens every single day, that is being driven and led by men. Part of that solution is women advocating for themselves and each other, and turning their ideas and their opinions and their stories into reality, making those invisible things real. And confidence is how you do that. And that's why this is the time where we need more women than ever learning how to be upfront, learning how to build confidence as a skill, as a muscle. And of course, what we'll get into in this conversation, that doesn't mean we're all transforming into this kind of stereotypical superhero woman who's confident all the time. That's not a reality. The reality is confidence ebbs and flows. In some parts of your life, you'll have lots of confidence. In other parts of your life, you'll have very little confidence. And that's very, very normal. But, that's not the story that we get sold. So that is why I am excited about the book coming out now. And the kind of context that feels most important to me is, confidence is the first step to power. It's the first step to protest. It's the first step to leadership. And those are the things that we need right now.
Yeah, I remember before I knew you, Lauren, I saw Upfront and I saw this line, and tell me, maybe drop a note in the chat if this resonated with you too. And it said, changing confidence, not women.
Yes.
And I thought, it stopped me in my tracks. I thought, oh my gosh, that is so true, because for so long, the books that were written about confidence, the lean-ins of the world, were that we were the problem. And that if only we could, be louder, then, it would all be sorted. And I think why this book and why your work is so groundbreaking, pioneering, is because it says the opposite. That actually we have been sold this model of confidence that is often arrogance, right? It's not real confidence. It's the loudest. And that is not the version of confidence that the world needs right now, that women need right now, or that you teach. So I want to know, because I haven't got my copy of the book yet, which I'm a little bit devastated about. But you have these steps, right? These kind of micro steps. And I'm wondering which ones, if I asked you to choose maybe just 2 or 3, we haven't prepped this, by the way, but this is what I do when I speak to people, I just throw them off. Is there any that you think, do you know what, if we could just get these 2 or 3 ideas out into the world embodied in women, they would make the biggest difference, what would they be?
So the first one is to stop saying sorry
Wow. I've
unnecessarily.
got a sorry jar from you on my desk somewhere that you sent me.
Yeah, so we did make sorry jars for our clients and collaborators, like a swear jar, but instead, every time you say sorry when you didn't need to say sorry, you have to put £1 in the jar. And of course, we're making light of something that is actually a huge issue, because language is one of the most powerful tools that we have as human beings. And the language that we use about ourselves with other people really, really matters. And also, sorry is a really important word. Sorry is a beautiful word. It's a really important sentiment. It's vital that we apologize and say sorry when we mean it and when we need to. But instead, what we do is say sorry at the start of our sentences, say sorry at the end of our sentences, say sorry for being hungry, saying sorry for being tired, saying sorry for being late, saying sorry for being on time, saying sorry for being too dressed up, saying sorry for not being dressed up enough. I mean, the list is endless. And I have a whole chapter in the book about why we need to get off the sorry train, because every time you say sorry when you don't mean to say sorry, you are diminishing your own confidence. And it's one of those tools or tips or tricks, if you like, that sounds very simple. When I say it out loud, that sounds like not that big a deal. But when you actually start to practice it, it's transformative. And I know that for the women who have been through our Bond program, which is our flagship product at Upfront, give me a +1 in the comments if you are a Bonder. We only have one rule over the 6-week learning experience. And there's only one time where I would call you out for something, and that is no sorries. For 6 weeks, you're not allowed to say sorry at all. And just that is incredibly transformative for people. And I'd be so curious to hear in the chat, if you're new to this idea, what comes up for you when you hear me saying we should say sorry less. And of course, it's also cultural, right? Depending on what country you grew up, cultural groups you belong to, our relationship with sorry changes. But there is a broad general rule across the board that women are saying sorry. Like 99.9% of the time we say sorry. There's absolutely no reason to say sorry. And, I've been practicing this for 10 years, and I still probably on a weekly basis either have my partner or my friends, and now my son, being like, well, you said sorry, what are you saying sorry for? And I'm like, damn it, because it's just so ingrained in us. So I think that would be the first one. And the second one would be this notion that confidence is a skill that you build. It is a muscle that you practice. Because the story that we are told around confidence is something you're born with. So I'm going to read a little page from my book, because why not? So the first chapter, every chapter starts with an old rule. So this is an old idea that is probably driving how you show up in the world, and you probably don't even notice because it's invisible and we don't see these things and we don't talk about it. And then we replace that old rule with a new rule, which is an upfront rule. So the old rule is confidence is something you're born with, and the new rule is confidence is a skill you practice. And so it says, maybe she's born with it. I was 5 years old. Maybelline had just launched their iconic Maybe She's Born With It, Maybe It's Maybelline campaign. Now, I'm no advertising exec, but the reason that this campaign became such a significant part of pop culture isn't because the word maybe is very close to the word Maybelline. It's that women are taught that the key attributes and skills that fuel confidence, progress, and power are innate. You're taught that confidence is a natural gift bestowed upon the lucky few, and there's no hope for the rest of us, unless you buy their product, of course. And so you tell yourself every damn day that you were not born with it, and you concede to moving through the world without actively learning confidence. And this is exceptionally good news for the status quo. Because for as long as you think that confidence is unteachable and unlearnable, you will stay exactly where you are. So when you learn that confidence is something that you can learn, everything changes.
It's so powerful. I love both of those. And interestingly, I talk about sorry in my book as well, because new mothers, it's like the sorry bug times 1,000. I don't know if
It's
anyone
also
else.
apologising for your child.
Also
Sorry,
apologising for the
sorry, they're
child.
not sitting still. Sorry.
Sorry, they're being a bit loud in the cafe. Sorry, my buggy's a bit big. Sorry that, this is sorry. Sorry, I'm breastfeeding. Sorry. I felt like I was just apologizing. And then I was like, why am I apologizing for this beautiful being? The other thing that I didn't take from your work as well, Lauren, is not just the word sorry, but the language that I use. So I used to say a lot of, in emails, I was just thinking that, or I wonder if, or would it be okay? Just diminishing a really powerful, good point in my language, particularly in written communication. I just wanted to say, I now delete that and I just say it. And it's so easy to do that. And I think it's so insidious, right? You don't realize how often we do that as women. We précis something that we want to say with a little softener.
Yeah, it's the softener because we're constantly, I need to make sure I'm soft enough so everybody around about me is okay. Nobody gets scared. Nobody gets intimidated.
Mm.
Everybody feels safe and comfortable. And that's also not our fault. I think as you're listening to Zoe and I, it's really easy to be listening and being like, oh my God, I do that, I do this, I do that. Like, of course you do. We all do. That's why we're here. That's a very intentional, like the system is working exactly as it's designed to work. So you need tons of self-compassion, tons of kindness. None of this is a personal failing or a personal flaw. But Zoe, talk to me about why mothers need confidence specifically. I think because the picture you started to paint there of the new mum with the buggy on the bus and breastfeeding and saying sorry all the time. I mean, I feel it in my heart. And there'll be lots of people in the room who are at that stage. So my little boy is 8. And Zoe, what age are your girls?
6 and 10.
6 and 10. So we're
Yeah.
out of early baby days, but we remember them very well. And we're now having new conversations about confidence and courage with our children. But why do you think mothers specifically need to learn confidence?
I mean, it's so similar to your work because, when we look at the macro picture, we do live in, particularly in the West, particularly in the UK, particularly in the US, in a world that is not designed for mothers and is actually actively unkind to mothers. When we think about the fact that, this word matrescence, that for anyone that knows my work, I'm incredibly passionate about sharing. First started talking about in 2018, everyone said I was bonkers, and it's now just starting to eke to be a bit more mainstream. But even the fact that was hidden, right? That we go through this seismic rewiring of every aspect of our lives, that was never understood. And so of course you think, well, it must be me. So the moment you understand, actually, no, this environment is unkind to me. It's not understanding of matrescence. Even, in huge ways, the way that our workplaces are set up, to even the way that our homes are set up. We know still that regardless of who earns more money in your household, the mother will still pick up the majority of the domestic labor and the invisible load. We know that statistically, even down to tiny micro ways that, you can only fit one buggy on a bus in London. I remember learning this rule and standing there for like 10, 12 buses going past. I was like, I didn't even know
Pouring down my face. I'm like,
this was a thing. You really start to realize, and I have my empathy and understanding for anyone with any disability now is like, how do you move around? Because I couldn't navigate. I was in London at the time. I couldn't navigate the transport system with a buggy. So it goes all the way up from the huge macro ways that we don't understand the shift to motherhood, to in our own homes, and then to the little microaggressions of the ways that we aren't understood. So of course, our confidence lowers when we become mothers, everything is new, right? And I think that's where we really need to build the confidence muscle, because confidence isn't smashing every single thing that you try. Confidence isn't that at all. Confidence is having the inner resolve to think, oh, I can handle it, whatever happens, and I can back myself and be kind to myself, whatever happens. That's, to me, is what true confidence is. And I think that's why we need it so much in those early days, because everything is new. You are going to make loads and loads of mistakes, not just in those first early years, the whole way through. And I've really developed this skill of confidence, which is, it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to put myself out there. It's okay to try something and it not go well. It's given me such a freedom. Whereas before, I used to be so paralyzed because I didn't have that skill of confidence, so paralyzed to try anything, to risk anything, to break out of my comfort zone. So when I think about what mothers need, right, what we need to do, we need to be able to advocate for ourselves in our workplaces, in our homes, in our relationships. That takes confidence. We need to be able to advocate for our children, you know, in the medical system, in the school system. That takes confidence. We need to be able to advocate for other women and other mothers, and that takes confidence. So, you know, the reason I'm so excited to do this and to talk about Lauren's book is because I think confidence is just the big unlock that gives us so much of what we need, you know, particularly in the workplace. Some of the statistics around, you know, what mothers ask for are shocking. In you know, we don't really have a gender pay gap. We have a maternal wall. We have a motherhood penalty. And so much of that, of course, comes from all the environmental and the macro factors, and it's not our job to fix. And I think the other is true, is that we don't ask for enough. We don't go for the promotion. We don't ask if we could do that senior role part-time, because we don't want to be seen as being a problem or inconvenient. And so I think so much of what Lauren teaches in the book will really unlock. It is the unlock. Having confidence is the unlock for what we need to thrive more through motherhood. I can see some people are sharing the Peanut brilliant campaign, and I was lucky enough to be a part of that with Michelle, who's the new president at Peanut, and it's just an incredible campaign, because matrescence, this word that I'm so passionate about, is still, it's in the UK dictionary, but it's not in the global dictionary. So if you write it, you get those red wiggly lines that says word not recognized. So thank you for those of you who are sharing that. But I feel like confidence it's the foundation. And to wrap up, the other reason it's so vital is because it's not just about us anymore. Whether we're raising daughters or sons, we have to model. We are modeling in every single day what it looks like to be a woman, what it looks like to be a mother. And so much of my work centers on the idea that, for me, parenting isn't really about reading the parenting books and saying the right words. It's more about modeling what I want my children to embody. So if I've got two girls, if I want them to be confident and to take risks and to advocate and to speak up for themselves, then the only way that they are going to learn that is by me modeling it. And so I don't teach them confidence. I try and model it. I try and show them what it looks like. I talk out loud about my failures. I talk out loud about things that I'm nervous about, risks that I'm taking, new ideas that I've got, because I think that's the best way.
Yeah, it's a question, or it's a reason, I think, that many, many women turn up at the door of the bond to take part in our 6-week program. They'll say, I want to raise confident children. How do I do that? And you're right, Zoe, that the very short answer to that question is you model it and you show them. But the very natural thing that happens when you say that, and I'd love to hear in the chat what comes up for you when you hear us saying that, I feel is a bit of like, oh, fuck, like that's a very, like a lot of pressure, a lot of responsibility.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, like this is on me. He's watching me all the time, especially those of you who have girls. She's watching me. I need to get this right. So the first thing I want to say is that needs to just get put in the bin, because
Yeah.
all that's going to do is stress you out and block your progress. That's why self-compassion and being kind to yourself, and keep coming back to the statistics that we've shared that are in my book, the one that says 90% of all people have a negativity bias towards women. That is the world that we are operating in. So you giving yourself a hard time is literally the most unhelpful thing that you can do. Instead, invite your children into that journey with you. And how I do that is we have a framework, a language, a piece of language that we use in our family. That last time Zoe and I talked about this was just very much that. It was a tool and a piece of language. We have since turned it into a children's book, which Zoe hosted the London launch of that book. And I have it here. It's called Taylor Meets the Trick. And the trick is shorthand for patriarchy. And it comes from Robert Webb, the comedian from Peep Show. He's got a couple of sentences in his book where he talks about he was trying to teach his 6-year-old daughter about the patriarchy because she was upset, why can't I dress up as Spider-Man for school? Everyone will laugh at me when the boys can dress up as Spider-Man. And he's like, well, you know, it's the patriarchy. And of course, 6-year-olds can't really get their head around that, nor can they say that word. It's a big, complicated word. And as she was trying to say it, it sounded like she was saying trick. And he was like, you know what, that's smart because it is a trick. And I remember reading that book and just thinking, oh my God, this is genius. This is so smart. Because at the time, my son was probably 2 or 3, long blonde curly hair, and just constantly being mistaken for a girl. And it would upset him. And he would be saying to me, why do they keep thinking I'm a girl? Why are they doing that? He would get sad, he would get angry, he would get frustrated. And trying to explain gender equality, patriarchal ideas does not land when your kid's 2 or 3. As soon as we started calling it the trick, he got it. And I'm not exaggerating. And so you've heard me tell these stories. He was tiny, and his little brain could get it. There's a thing in the world that tricks people, and it makes us think there's rules for boys and rules for girls. One of those silly rules that we are tricked into thinking is that boys have short hair and girls have long hair. So now in the moment when someone thinks he's a girl, he just goes, ha, they've been tricked. Doesn't think anything else of it. And he's 8 now, so that's 6 years that language has been in our family. And so let's think about, I don't want somebody to take my picture because I'm in a bikini on the beach. And he's there and he can see me saying, no, don't take my picture. And rather than me feeling shame in that moment and thinking, oh, I'm being a really bad role model and I'm showing him this awful societal norm, I say to him, this is really, really hard for me because since I was your age, the trick has been teaching me that you have to be really thin to wear a bikini and you have to be really thin and beautiful. And I don't feel that right now. And even though I know that it's the trick, it still feels really hard. So that moment becomes a moment for him to learn and understand and be with me on that learning journey. And it also helps me to remember, yeah, that's why it is so hard. Because I grew up, you know, looking at Kate Moss every day. Like there is a reason why these things feel so hard. And it means that we can have language for, you know, he'll say to me, why do you put makeup on before you go on the call and daddy doesn't? And I'll say, well, because the trick makes fun of boys who wear makeup. So they don't do it so often, even though when they want to. And because the trick has made me feel that, and it makes people respond to me better if I have makeup on. And he starts to, you know, it just starts to become a dialogue. And I think that's a good tool to bring them into the process. And it also works in the moments you're talking about, though, when you're modeling, when you've made a mistake, when you're doing something that feels scary. I mean, I have a very real example, which is slightly insane, and I still can't actually say it out loud without making fun of myself because it feels so ridiculous. But on Tuesday, I auditioned for Swedish Pop Idol, and I saw his face. That is the correct response. So obviously, I was shitting my pants, for lack of a better expression. And I kept saying to Atlas, oh my God, this just feels, what am I doing? Oh my God, it was just really like, whoa. And that's why I did it, because I've studied this stuff enough to know when an opportunity like that presents itself, you need to go in there, because that's where you're going to, I was doing it very intentionally. And he just was like, just in it with me. And like that feels really important, that he can see me saying yes to a thing that feels scary. And I was like, what if they laugh at me? Like, what if I forget my words? And he kept saying, doesn't matter. Just try. Just try anyway. And the other big thing for my motherhood journey has been the introversion, extroversion thing. Because you haven't noticed by now, I am your most favourite Scottish extroverted friend. I am very extroverted naturally, and I have somehow ended up with a partner and a son who are extremely introverted. And so having an introvert son has taught me so much about confidence in the context of introversion and extroversion. Now, of course, intellectually, because of the work I do, I know that confidence does not equal loudness. We've got a whole chapter on that. The old rule is confidence is loud. The new rule is confidence comes in many, many different volumes. Often the most confident person in the room is the quietest. But when you have a child who is naturally introverted, other people also feel uncomfortable with that, because they want your child to wave at them and say hello and join in at the party and be the first to put their hand up. And my son is not that person. And there used to be moments where I would feel really uncomfortable in those moments, because when I was little, if I was going to a party, I was, first to dance, first to put my hand up. And that's what the world celebrates and rewards, because the world has a bias towards extroversion. And so when my little boy's like hiding behind me, doesn't want to speak out, doesn't want to be in the spotlight, I've had to learn not to project any of myself onto that and see that shyness as a behavior, not a personality trait. And I had to have conversations with my family about it, my extended family, because I could hear them saying things like, oh, he's such a shy boy and he's so shy. And I said, no. He's not shy. He is feeling shy in this moment. If you and I had to go on a date tomorrow night or go to a Pop Idol audition, we would feel shy. Like, that's a very natural human response to being in those moments. Doesn't mean that we are shy people. And so just that reframe has been really powerful for me. And something that I heard Becky from the Good Institute talk about is like, in those moments at the party, when everybody's six and you're like, you want them to go first and you want them to join in, and you might feel uncomfortable because they're not. What happens if you fast forward that to 16 years and, they're all at a bar and they've decided to climb up a construction framework, and your son goes, I don't really want to join in. I don't want to do that. You would say, I'm so proud of you. You would feel so proud and good in that moment, because what they are doing is listening to themselves. Like, hesitation is them trusting themselves. That's what confidence is. Trusting yourself. I don't want to go first. I don't want to be on the dance floor. And I'm going to honor that feeling and that need and that want. And that's a beautiful, really important skill. And often when they're little, because we live in this world that's biased towards extroversion, we push them into, oh no, but you should go and just try it. And why don't you, so it's like sitting with that confidence can be quiet. Confident people feel shy all the time. Tell me about how do you think about raising confident kids, Zoe?
Yeah, it's fascinating to me, and I love this, and I can see in the chat that it's resonating a lot as well, because I am highly introverted, so I'm very confident. I love speaking. I love doing my podcast work. I love being on stages, but I have to recharge by being on my own. So that's the one of the key traits of introversion. Do you feel energized by being around a lot of people? Is that how you get your energy, or is it being alone? And that's, for me, it's alone time. I need a lot of decompression time after being out. And so I think I try and really teach my girls that that's what the confidence isn't about being the loudest. Confidence is about, as you said, Lauren, it's about trusting yourself. And I really try and teach that. I also try and model and talk a lot about, just as you do, mummy's really nervous. I'm trying this new thing at work. I don't know if it's going to work. And they will say back to me, it's phenomenal. And children do this, like they're amazing little coaches. They say back to me, but mummy, it doesn't matter if you fail. We're just proud of you for trying, or what's the worst that can happen? Or they will really coach that back to me. And I love that, because I think that's far more powerful from when they're in a situation. So my little girl will say, I'm so nervous about going to the party. I'll say, well, what would you say to mummy? I'm not saying to her, oh, don't be silly, you can do it, because that is actually really invalidating to someone's experience. So that is how I try and do it. I talk openly about what I'm scared about, just like you did with the pop idol. I talk openly about failures that I've had, things that are going wrong. And of course, I celebrate things that are going right. But we talk a lot in my family about vision and what we want to achieve and making changes. So if the girls complain about something at school, particularly the 10-year-old, I will say, fascinating that doesn't work for you. What are you going to do about it? And then I drop the conversation. I do not engage in any complaining or, God, that's awful. Yeah, the school should change that. I can say, yeah, I think I agree with you. That policy doesn't feel right. What are you going to do about that? And so far, my 10-year-old, she hasn't taken up that mantle yet, but I feel like I'm opening that loop in her brain, which is when something doesn't work for you, you don't complain and kind of lament it. You think about, right, what can I change? I'm trying to raise like little activists.
Yeah, totally. I love that. And I think thinking of them as coaches, sorry,
Yeah.
Thinking of your children as coaches is really beautiful. One of the lines my little boy always seems to whip out at just the right time. Often if I'll be like, oh my gosh, I'm so tired, or he'll see me, I have to have another meeting, and he'll go, you're the leader, so you get to decide, just don't do it. And I'm like,
oh yeah,
it's like I do get to decide. Like nobody's, I don't have a boss. I'm not employed. Like there is nobody watching me who's going to give me in trouble. This is all entirely self-created. And when he says that, every time he says it to me, I do get this like, you're right, I do get to decide, and I am the leader, and that's the path that I've chosen. And so what am I going to do about it? If I've had too many meetings in that day, or, whatever that looks like. And it's, we also talk about vision, I think, in the context of, I guess, entrepreneurship, and that you can build and make anything that you can imagine. And we were both laughing the other day because he was using Netflix, trying to find something on Netflix, and said, this is really not very well designed, given that Netflix is one of the biggest companies in the world. And I was like, oh gosh, what have I done? because I studied product design. It's like I just spend my life being irritated that things are not designed well for people. Interfaces are complicated. TV remotes have too many buttons on them. And he hears that dialogue. But you're right, it needs to switch to like, okay, well, that's out of our control, or what are we going to do about it? Like, I love Tina Ross Eisenberg, who founded Creative Mornings. She always talks about this notion of you can complain 3 times and then you need to try and fix it. And, I always credit that idea to what made me build up front all those 10 years ago, because I was just constantly irritated going to conference after conference, seeing the same middle-aged white men giving very average presentations and being like, why are there no women on any of these stages? Like, what is happening? And I was very naive. Like, I had believed the lie of meritocracy. I didn't understand the trick. I didn't understand what was happening. And then, then one day at a conference where I was the only woman on the lineup, I had to say, like, I can't keep complaining about this. I need to do something about it.
Yeah, it's so true. And I ask my kids this question as well, which is, if they talk to me about anything or ask me a question, my first question always back to them is, what do you think?
Yeah.
Because I want them to get used to obviously thinking for themselves, but also that what they think is valid, that actually they're smarter than they think they are. Because I grew up, I had this incredible experience. I haven't talked about this, but this feels like a safe space. I had this incredible experience recently where I grew up with this narrative that I wasn't smart. I don't know where it came from. It didn't come from my parents, but I did so well academically. And I told myself this story forever, that I wasn't smart, that I just worked really hard. And I really believed it. If you'd asked me 6 weeks ago, I would say, oh no, I'm not actually that smart. I just apply myself and I work really hard. And then for some reason, my husband decided to do like an online IQ test. I don't know why, like a Mensa thing. So I was like, oh, I'll have a go at that. And the score was like top 0.5% of the country. And I was completely blown away. And it really shook the whole foundation. It was one of those beliefs that I'd held about myself. And that piece of data completely blew that out of the water. And I thought, what other beliefs about myself am I holding on to that are just not true? And I do this work day in, day out. I work constantly, in my coaching practice on limiting beliefs and where did that come from and whose narrative is that? And even, that's a huge one about how I'm assessing that. And yeah, it just really blew my mind how ingrained these beliefs about ourselves are, and how 99% of the time they're not true and they're not real.
No.
And so I would encourage anyone on this call, like, it's one of the most powerful exercises you can do. Lauren, you talk about it as well, but what are those beliefs that you have about yourselves, and are they true? Because 99% of the time they are not. And actually you are far more capable, far more confident, far more able to achieve whatever it is you want to than you believe you are. And I think a huge part of confidence is that self-perception, is that self-belief.
Yeah. I mean, I'm really glad you've realised you're smart. Really glad that my friend Kat's realised she's incredibly smart. All of you here are very smart. And, doesn't need to be smart in the Mensa test way.
Oh, exactly.
I would do with the Mensa
That was
test.
just my example.
But, I am a creative visionary. I know that, Intelligence comes in lots of different shapes and sizes. I think the thing about limiting beliefs is really important, because that is at the core of why I've written this book. Every single chapter is, so there's 24 chapters, 24 rules. And those old rules will be a manifestation of these limiting beliefs.
Yes.
And so the chapters are introducing you to an old rule that you've been taught to follow, giving you a new rule to replace them with, and then teaching you how to unlearn the old rule. So how do you unlearn this idea that the story you've been telling yourself for decades that you're not smart? What does that look like? Then the next, so the book is in three parts: unlearning, then relearning. It's like, okay, now I'm learning this new rule. Now I'm trying on this new story, this new coat that doesn't quite fit me, that I'm going to like get comfortable with. And then the third section is about being upfront. What does that mean practically? How do you execute it? How do you implement it? And at the end of each chapter, there is what I call the upfront moment, which is also the name of our podcast, where there is stories and questions for you to ask yourself to help you do that unlearning and relearning, like some of the questions that Zoe just asked you. And what that means is you'll unlearn the limiting beliefs that are keeping you small. So you're going to identify what those beliefs are. And some of them we all have, and it's my mission to get rid of them. For example, internalized misogyny.
Yes.
Women are actively taught and rewarded for bringing other women down, for hating on other women. Someone said in a comment somewhere that can also actually become amplified during motherhood because judgment and comparison becomes so severe.
Yeah.
And I know that no, I'm going to correct that and say, even now, Instagram is one of the most negative forces when it comes to my motherhood because of comparison. So that's a limiting belief, an old rule that you probably don't think about very much. This book will teach you how to replace with new stories and new narratives that feel true and they're rooted in agency and self-trust and progress. Then the second thing that will happen is you're starting to build confidence in a way that actually fits into your day-to-day life. So it's not, big grand ideas or, practical, fluffy self-help speak. It's practical tools you can use immediately, like we're not going to say sorry anymore. We're going to do that for 7 days and we're going to notice and be aware of what happens. We're going to try new things. We're going to start sharing our work in new ways. We're going to build lasting confidence over what we call in the book micro actions, tiny, tiny things that you can do in a very short space of time. And then the third thing, which also feels really important, thinking of what we said at the start of the call, of the cultural moment that we are living in that demands self-advocacy and resistance and protest and hopefulness. We must resist. We must give up. Must not give up. Zoe and I were actually chatting before this call about the pressure that we are both feeling around our faces aging. Because in some of the circles that we work in, all of the women round about us look 25 because they are choosing to have various different things done to their face. And Stacey Grant Canham from Black and Beach actually just put a brilliant thing on her Instagram about this, and she's going to be my guest host for my book launch in Glasgow in Waterstones on March 10th. If any of you are in Glasgow, please come along. And Stacey wrote, she's struggling with it every day. It's like, should I do it? Should I not do it? Am I judging the women that are doing it by saying that I don't want to have it? And this just like horrible feeling in the pit of our stomachs when we are looking in the mirror because we don't look 25. And all of the women who are being put on pedestals and put on stages and sold to us as what beautiful is, they don't look like us because we don't see these aging faces. So that's why community conversations really, really matter. Because when you start to have a dialogue with others and realize that you are not alone in this, it is incredibly transformative. Someone's asking, would your book help someone who's neurodivergent? Yes, I am neurodivergent and I wrote it. So it is welcoming for everyone who wants to think about confidence. And I also really applaud all of you who are here today. My friend yesterday, we were talking about the book and she's saying, we forget that this conversation is hard. It's uncomfortable. talking about your own confidence, thinking about your parenting, that's hard. And you have to be courageous and confident to do that, and brave. And like you've all done that showing up here today. All of you who have pre-ordered have done that because you're saying, yes, I want to have this conversation. I want to look at myself. I want to unlearn these old rules. And it's through the stories in the book, the research in the book. There's also ways you can become part of the Upfront community through the book. You start to feel, wow, this is not me. It's so not, you are not the problem, as Taylor Swift sings. Like, you're really, really not. Community is so important. And when you grow your confidence together, that's when the world starts to change. Because, you know, Zoe made a good point earlier and said it's the system and it's not our job to fix it. And Laura Bates has written a brilliant book called Fix the System, Not the Women. And that's why our strapline is change confidence, not women. However, systems are made up of people, and we are all people. We have agency and power to change systems, to build new systems, and to influence the system that we are operating in. And that's why we need confidence, because confidence is what helps us do that. And that is the end of my TED Talk. Yes. So I think we're going to do questions. We've got a few minutes for questions. While you're popping them in the chat, and if folks are listening on Instagram too, you can put questions in the chat. Someone asked earlier, Zoe, how do you navigate respecting that your child doesn't want to join in, but them not missing out on opportunities? And then please put your questions in the chat as Zoe answers that, and we'll answer them.
Yeah, it's such a good question, because I think that sometimes, if I think about my girls, I don't know about all children, sometimes my girls do need that confidence boost. So I would, instead of saying, okay, you don't want to do whatever it is, gymnastics, even though they've been enjoying it and they want to drop out halfway through the term. So there's one rule that we have in our home around opportunities and clubs and activities, is that if you start, you finish. I have a very firm rule about you don't drop out halfway through. So an example would be my little girl, she signed up to do this play at this big theatre group, and she was loving it. And then before the big show, she was like, Mummy, I don't want to do it anymore and I want to quit. And so we had a really big conversation about what was going on under that feeling. I validated, of course, it makes sense. You're nervous. I'd be nervous. There's a lot of pressure. And it all turned out that the teacher had been saying, this is the biggest moment of your lives and don't mess it up because all the mummies and daddies are coming. And so I talked to her about how that was the teacher's standard and she shouldn't be putting that pressure on you. And I said, the mummies and daddies, they really don't care if you mess the whole thing up, to be honest. So we talked a lot about where her feelings of wanting to quit and not do it were coming from. So that's the first step, right? Is you validate the feeling under the words, right? It's always something deeper going on. And then I said, and you have to do it because you're part of a team now. You can't let other people down. And once you've done it, you will go through that experience. You might love it, you might hate it, but you're going to learn from it. And then you get to choose when you've done that experience, whether you sign up again or not. So that is how I handled that. But I mean, I am still learning this, very much so. But I think it's that fine line between we validate the feeling and I try to teach my girls that you can do things scared. And in fact, most things that are good in life, you will do scared.
Yeah, it's a great answer. I think for me, my thing in that moment is I have to work really hard to remember that what would be a really good experience for me is not necessarily a really good experience for him. So let's say we're somewhere where there's a dance floor and there's people dancing. Like I really want him to be the kid that wants to dance because I'm the kid that wants to dance. But and we have this conversation, my partner and I, because he does not want to dance. He's not dancing. And he'll be like, and I'll be like, oh, but it's so fun and he's missing out. And he's like, no, it doesn't feel like you're projecting what dancing feels like for you onto him.
Yeah.
That's not what he feels when he dances. So there's also something about that, I think, where we need to remember that what is a good experience differs between us. Um, so I think that's the thing that I would be holding on to in that moment, to try and assess, like, am I trying to push him to do this because it's something that I think would be a good experience, or is it actually a good experience? Like yesterday, his class went ice skating because we live in Sweden and all the lakes are frozen, so they take their little ice skates into school and they go to skate. And he's not very good at it because he's only done it a couple of times, and a lot of his friends are very good at it because they play ice hockey. He was saying to me in the morning, I don't want to go. I don't want to skate. And I knew it was because he doesn't want to do something he's not good at. And we all have this beginner's mindset, very uncomfortable. I don't want to do this thing if I'm not going to be really good at it. And I just said, I know, but you will, and just try. And I almost like, I was like, I was also like, not everything's a TED talk. You need to just like let it, like just let it be. I get it. You don't want to go. I think it'll be really good. Give it a try. Comes back, he's like, skating's amazing. I learned this, I did this. And I'm like, oh yeah, cool, good. And I also didn't do the like, so what did this teacher? But like, I will do that the next time there's I don't want to do this because I'm not good at it. It's like, well, do you remember the skating? Because that's why you didn't want to skate, because you weren't good at it. And then you tried, and then you were really happy. So that's how I would think about that, I think. I don't think we've got any
Yeah, there's
questions.
a question that I think you should take,
Okay.
which is from Ingrid, who says that her confidence is situational. She works with lots of experts.
Okay.
She is not the expert. It sounds like her expertise is sort of bringing together these experts and project managing. And she's saying, any tips? I tried to give value to the reason I am there, not being the expert in the room, but I still find it very hard. Any tips in finding confidence in situations like this?
Situations where you're not the expert.
Yeah, where you're surrounded by a room of experts. I'm thinking this is in a work situation. You're surrounded by, you're not a subject matter expert, but you're there perhaps to, maybe Ingrid, give us a little bit more.
Yes,
How does she
exactly.
find that confidence?
Okay. So there is a chapter in the book where the old rule is you have to be an expert. So that is going to be a great one. Here's what I think. I think that people who are perfect and know all the things are sometimes a bit boring. People who are figuring stuff out and learning are more interesting. It's like, I don't want to learn from someone who's like, oh, I've been doing this for 30 years and I know every single thing inside out. I'm going to learn more from somebody who's like, I've been doing this for like 6 months longer than you. Here's what I'm thinking about. What are you thinking about? So I do think there's something about what's the word? Unpedestaling. That's not the word.
Yeah.
Dethroning this kind of narrative of expert. Because in some cases, yes, if I'm going for surgery, I would like the most expertise in the room. But in some situations, especially when others are learning, it's actually not as interesting. There's not as much curiosity. Then I think, and this I think applies to all of you, regardless of where you work, how you work, what your context is. There is a reason why your organization hired you. And that reason is real. I need you to believe that they hired you for all of the reasons, and those reasons are real. You were chosen very specifically to be the person to do that job.
Yeah.
And when you don't believe that you are the right person to do that job, you're doing a disservice to the person who chose you. And you're doing a disservice to the wider team, to the wider context of your organization. So think about and connect with the reasons why you're there. Now, I'm just going to guess some, given the tiny paragraph you've shared. You are there because you are very good at facilitation, curation, because you're very good at reading rooms, at knowing what a room needs at what time, because you're very organized, because you're very reliant, because you're very capable of translating information between contexts. All of those things are incredibly valuable. There is a reason why you're in that room. And you're telling yourself a story that's not true about your value in that room. This is an old rule that you're going to set fire to, put in the bin, and get rid of. Because the brilliant thing about our brains is all of these old rules are neural pathways, and we can build new neural pathways, even when we are in our 80s. We can still build new neural pathways. Ingrid says, feels transformational to hear. Well, that job well done. Thank you for such a great question. We are out of time, but I would want to say thank you so much for being here. Thank you for being such a good audience. Thank you so much to Zoe for being my co-host. Please also follow Zoe on Instagram, buy Zoe's book, The Motherkind. Mine's on my bookcase downstairs. Anybody you know who is pregnant should get that book. And please consider pre-ordering my book. I know that you see people saying, please pre-order, please pre-order. I can't stress enough
So
how
important.
big a deal a pre-order is. Every single pre-order sends a signal to the publishers and the retailers that this book matters, that these stories matter. And the great news is if you pre-order today, you'll have it in a few days. You don't need to wait that long. Some of you in the chat pre-ordered 6 months ago. They've been waiting a really long time. So please consider pre-ordering. If that's not an option for you, I would be so grateful if you could follow me on Instagram and share the book with others in your network. We have free launches happening, one online, one in Glasgow, several in London. Everybody's welcome. Bring your colleagues, bring your friends, bring your babies. And yeah, just thank you so much. I really hope today has added value. Please let us know. Zoe, do you want to say?
Yeah, just thank you. Thank you everyone for joining, and thank you, Lauren, for who you are. Thank you for how you work, and thank you for the work that you do. It is so needed. It is incredible. Please, let's get Lauren, and this book just out to every single woman that needs it. It's needed now more than ever. And I just can't wait to champion it more and more and more. And I cannot wait to read it. I have also pre-ordered my copy. So thank you everyone for joining us. It's been an absolute joy. And let us know, DM either of us with any more questions or just any feedback or reflections. And we will see you all soon, and have an incredible rest of your day.
Thank you, everybody. Bye. Bye, Zoe.